So I think it's the worst examples are in the United States, but they're not the only examples of where universities in particular are coming under extraordinary pressure to conform to whatever the system wants them to be rather than what historically they have been.
Yeah, and within this context, how do you believe that a platform, at least as I conceive it, and perhaps yourself too, and certainly other colleagues conceive it as an ethical platform, a dialogic platform to really put back on the table discussions about the purposes of education in general? How do you see the role of a global citizenship education that is potentially at least critically and ethically oriented within this super complexity that you just described? And later, I want to ask you also a couple of questions about your book, but let's begin with this question. I believe is challenging enough for a first part of this conversation.
Yeah, I think this is an important question. Yeah, the question is, where do we want the impact of our work to be? We can continue to work together. We can continue to write. So far, there are journals which will publish everything that we want to say. But are these the people who need to hear what we want to say? That is, how do we influence policy? How do we influence politicians? How do we get the message to those to whom the message may not be so appealing?
Yeah.
So I see it at two levels. Yeah, we can continue to talk, and that's good. We continue to go to conferences, we can continue to write, but that's not going to change anything. And I think citizenship and citizenship education in particular ought to be about change. What are we going to change? Who are we going to change? And how are we going to do it? I think these are the big issues.
Yeah. Agency. I believe this is a core element that you are introducing here. So how would you then take this platform, global citizenship education, which by definition puts together three big notions, global citizenship education indeed. How would you advance a type of global citizenship education that takes it to the policymakers and the people in power, if we can call them so, in a way that potentially at least, theoretically at least, shapes their minds towards a type of society that is not only GDP and economic based, but also values based, ethically oriented, and potentially fostering a type of leadership that is more interested in the common good?
Well, I think there are a couple of ways. One is to remember the value of education and how it is that we educate about citizenship. On the one hand, there's a lot of work on citizenship about action, about getting things done, about being an active citizen. But I think that's important. But we also got to think about the knowledgeable citizen. What do we want young people to know? For example, in the United States, presidents, probably the last three presidents, have been elected with less than 50% of the vote. So voting is actually very important.